Well, Cuba's new president is facing the daunting task of turning the island's struggling economy around and deciding whether to push forward stalled market reforms. And for more on that, we're going to bring in Fernando Menendez. He is an economist and the senior fellow for the strategic initiatives at the Center for a Secure Free Society. How are you? Great to see you.
I'm doing well. I'm very glad to be here.
Big day, big day.
Very big.
Why pick Diaz-Canel? I know he was in line, obviously, but why was he the anointed one?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I said this morning on a previous show that what we're watching is a very conservative revolution. He talked about no changes. He talked about continuity, and I think that's been his record. He's been a company man for a very long time, and I think in a period where things are a little bit unstable, they were looking for someone they could trust and somebody who would be that company man, if you will.
How much power will he actually have with Raul still running the Communist Party, the military really working on the economy? Where will he fit in?
This is a great question because he doesn't have a base per se. He doesn't come out of the military. He does have a history of being in the party and what have you, but he doesn't have his own team that we've seen so far. And I think he'll be watched very, very carefully by Raul and the remaining historic leaders. It's interesting because all day people have been saying this is the first time in 60 years that Cuba will have a non-Castro as president. Not exactly. From 59 to 76, under the old constitution, they had a president, Osvaldo Dorticos. Fidel Castro was prime minister. 76, new constitution, he becomes president. Dorticos was a figurehead. And so the question now becomes, are we reverting to a similar figurehead?
For every reform, they seem to have added a new tax or regulation. Foreign investment has been really slow to materialize because it's hard to get approved.
Very.
What kind of changes do you really think will be made?
Again, another great question. The reforms so far, as we've talked, I think, before, have been very, very small, very slow, if you will. What is required of the Cuban economy is much more than these reforms. They're not allowing people, for example, to form capital, to accumulate capital, to grow the economy. There are no independent courts to provide for security of contracts. You still can't do business with individual Cubans. You have to do business with some government or government agency. So the reforms, again, in the last 10 years have been very, very small. It would be interesting to see him break out of that, but I doubt he'll be allowed to.
With all of Venezuela's problems, who will Cuba rely on for aid?
One of the sources of aid, I think, will be Russia to some degree. I think Cuba would like China to provide for some sort of security. But really, we could be facing a very difficult period ahead. Again, the Cuban economy is not a very strong, not a very powerful economy. It's not one that you necessarily want to invest in because they're producing very little. So they could potentially just be a handout.
In his speech, he says the revolution will continue. You've got people leaving their government jobs, renting out their places on Airbnb, driving cars, taxis, doing anything they can, to find alternate sources of income. What will his message be to the people? Is this what they want? And is this what they want to hear? The revolution will continue.
I think, this is what he has to say. This is what he has to say. But as I say, it's becoming a very conservative revolution. These options that you mentioned that some people are taking on, short of leaving and moving to Miami, they are looking for something much more fundamental, something much more, I would almost say, more radical than what's being promised. Again, I don't believe in the immediate time period we're going to see any of that happen. Whether he turns into the Cuban Gorbachev, that would be an interesting historical moment. I'd like to be back 5 years from now to see if that happens. I tend to doubt it. I tend to doubt it.
All righty. Well, Fernando Menendez with CSIS, thank you. Always great to see you.